welcome, and thank you so much for checking out my channel today. My name is Tanny, and I am an independent author and somebody who just really loves a great story. So on this channel, I talk about writing and self-publishing, books I've enjoyed, and lessons I've learned on my publishing journey. Lately, I have been thinking a lot about beta reading, and that's because my young adult fantasy novel, Tethered Spirits, is currently out with beta readers for the second time. I thought I would take a minute today to kind of talk about my beta reading process and what it looks like and how it's evolved over the years, because it has really changed a lot, and I feel like it's finally gotten to a place where it works really well for me, and maybe some of the things that I have learned along the way can help you guys if you are looking into getting beta readers for yourself or for your own books. When I was writing down some notes for this video, it ended up coming out a lot longer than I thought it would. Beta reading can be kind of a complicated process, and there's a lot of things to think about and a lot of moving parts involved. And so I think what I'm going to do is actually break this down into a few videos. I do think it's important also to remember that everybody's process is different, and what works really well for me may not work for you. And it's okay if your process doesn't look exactly like mine. These are just some things that I found have worked really well for me, and some tips and tricks that I've learned as I've worked with beta readers over the last 10 years or so. But feel free to take or leave any part of this that you feel like applies or doesn't apply to your own process. It's really just about figuring out what works best for you. While we're on the subject, go ahead and leave a comment below to tell me about what your experience has been like working with beta readers, or if you have any questions about the beta reading process. This is one of my favorite parts of the writing process, and I would love to make more videos about it if you guys feel like it would be helpful or useful at all. So in this first video, I really just want to start with some basic information about beta reading and the things that you might want to think about or consider before you jump into the actual beta reading part where you send your manuscript off and get feedback from others. So first of all, let's talk about the difference between beta readers and critique partners. Now, there is a lot of overlap between these terms sometimes, and what they mean to one person might not be exactly the same as what they mean to another. But in general, I've found that the term beta reader is used to refer to somebody who is reading an early version of your manuscript, and they provide feedback as they go along about some of the big picture elements of a story, such as plot, characters, pacing, world building, and other things of that nature. A beta reader might be somebody who's another writer, or they might not be. A critique partner, on the other hand, is somebody who usually is another writer. You will probably be exchanging chapters or entire manuscripts with this person so that you are each providing feedback to the other. Sometimes people think of a critique partner as more of an alpha reader, which means that they're involved earlier on in the process. And that's fine if you want to think about them that way, or if you use them at that earlier stage of your process. If that's the case, your critique partner might be reading chapters as you finish them and kind of as you go along writing the book. And they might even do multiple passes of it as you revise the story and send it out to them again. I actually tend to think of critique partners a little differently, where they are writers who I've built a longer term relationship and connection with, and I've probably read multiple stories of theirs, or we've worked together over a number of projects, and I just tend to have a better connection with them, a longer term connection. For me, beta readers and critique partners are involved in my book's development, essentially in the same capacity. For the purposes of this video, I'm just going to use the term beta reader to refer to any reader who reads your manuscript and provides feedback on it before it's finished and ready for publication. However, I am not talking about ARC readers or ARC readers who get an advanced copy of the book and just read it to provide a review before it's published. Okay, so first let's talk about when you should get beta readers involved. For me, I like to get beta readers involved after a second draft. I do not ask for beta readers after I finish my first draft. Finishing a first draft is a big accomplishment, and it's something you should be celebrating and be excited about. But my opinion is that probably a book is not going to be ready for beta readers after a first draft. Unless you're somebody who can write really clean and really polished drafts, I just don't think it's realistic. I am not one of those people. My first drafts are absolute crap, and they are not fit for the eyes of anybody except myself, because there's a lot of things in there that I already know need to be fixed. And so I try to go back and fix those things myself before I send it out to anybody else, because honestly, I just feel like I would be wasting everyone's time, including my own, if I sent out a first draft knowing what issues it had and knowing what already needed to be fixed. Some people do send out their first drafts to alpha readers or beta readers, and that's fine if that's what works for you. But again, like I said, my first drafts are just so convoluted and messy, and things have changed and evolved as I've been writing, and so it just doesn't make any sense for me to send out a first draft. The next thing to think about is how many rounds of beta reading you plan to do and how many beta readers to get for each round. For me and where I'm at in my writing process and development right now, 2 rounds of beta reading seems to be about right. And it's also gotten to the point now where, because I am more experienced and I have a better understanding of how stories work and how to tell the stories that I want to tell in the way I want to tell them, I can often make a lot of those major changes myself in that first round of revisions that I do before the story even goes out to beta readers. Which means that when I do send the story out to that first round of readers, it's really just kind of looking to see how they react to certain things, if their reactions are what I intended, or if there are things that I missed when I was doing my own revisions that I can make better and improve on. And so while sometimes I do have to make pretty significant changes after I hear back from beta readers, it's not to the level that it was with my first or my second book, where there were major issues and structural things that were just not working at all that I needed to change. And that really just comes with time and experience. And if you're not there yet, that's okay. You'll get there. The more that you do it, the easier it gets. At some point, though, you do need to be careful that you're not just seeking feedback over and over again on a story that is broken and is never going to work, or that you've made all the changes that you can make and the story is the best that you can make it at your skill level right now, because you can get into this cycle where you're just constantly revising and editing and making changes, and then you're just kind of stuck. If you do feel like you're in that cycle, just take a step back. Maybe it's time to work on something else. Maybe it's time to just take a break from writing and go do something else, and so that you can come back to the story with fresh eyes and really evaluate if this is something that needs to change and that you really do need other feedback on, or if there's other stuff going on and you're just stuck in this endless cycle. For each round of beta reading that I do, I try to get at least 5 readers and usually no more than 8, with the expectation that at least 2 or 3 of those people are going to drop out and are not going to finish reading the manuscript or give me feedback. Now, sometimes they all do. They all finish, they all follow through, and if that's the case, then that's great. But a lot of the times, that's just not going to happen. People have other stuff that comes up, or maybe they decide that the story really isn't just a good fit for them after all. And so for me, 5 is a good number. 2 or 3 is, kind of low, but it works for me because I know that I'm going to do another round later probably. The biggest thing I think is just that you want to get a variety of beta readers and a variety of different perspectives and ideas so that you can really gauge what needs to be changed. But you also don't want so many that it gets to be overwhelming and you can't sort through all that feedback and figure that out. For me, 7 or 8 is about the maximum that I can handle, and that works pretty well for me. Usually that means between both rounds of beta reading, I come out with somewhere between 8, maybe 15, 16 beta readers on the really high end, but usually at least 10, somewhere in the middle there, and that tends to be a good number that works for me. That is really just talking about novels. For short stories, I don't tend to do that many beta readers. And I will usually only do 1 round instead of 2. For me, they just don't require as much work or as much feedback because they are generally less complex than a novel, and I can kind of revise and polish them to where they need to be, mostly on my own, but it's always nice to get, 1 round of beta readers and some extra eyes on it just to really pull everything together. The next thing to consider is where to find beta readers. There are a lot of different ways that I've done this over the years, so I'll just share some of my ideas and things that have worked best for me. I think the biggest thing has been to make connections with other writers. This is especially good if you're trying to find kind of those longer term critique partners and people who you really trust with your stories and who can work with you over multiple projects. When I've made those connections, the feedback that I get from those writers, because I know their work and I know the kinds of stories that they write and they kind of know the stories that I'm writing and where I'm coming from, I tend to find that their feedback is a little more insightful and more accurate to what I'm trying to do with the story, especially compared to, just kind of random people that I might find other places to be my beta readers. Some of the ways that you can make those connections are to offer to be a beta reader for somebody else. Find other writers whose work sounds interesting to you, maybe somebody who writes in the same genre as you do, and keep an eye out for times where they might be looking for somebody to provide feedback, and go ahead and reach out and ask if they'd like you to look over their manuscript. It's also a good idea to interact with other writers on social media and to kind of build those relationships there. The writing community on Twitter is a great place for that, but you can also find writers on other social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Goodreads, wherever you feel like works best for you. One of the things that I love best about my critique partners is that they really seem to understand my story and my writing style and where I'm coming from and the kinds of stories that I'm trying to tell, the characters that I'm trying to convey on the page. And so they're able to guide me in the right direction with a little more nuance and a little more understanding, and that is just super valuable to me. So if you can find somebody like that, then that's really going to be the ideal situation, I think. It takes time to build those relationships, and it's going to take some effort on your part, but it's really worthwhile when you can make those connections. If you have a newsletter, you can also find beta readers by asking your newsletter readers to sign up to beta read for you. The nice thing about newsletter subscribers is that they are usually people who've already heard about your work and are already interested in your work, so they might be more inclined to want to beta read for you and to want to be engaged with you in that part of your writing process. There are also some beta reading groups on Goodreads where you can swap manuscripts with other writers, or you can put out a call that you're looking for beta readers and people can sign up that way. I've had more luck with that in the past than I have recently, so I'm not sure if those groups have kind of started to die out or if I just haven't had any luck with Tethered Spirits in particular. I do think that it's a little harder to find beta readers for a manuscript when it's like 150,000 words long compared to, something like Calico Thunder, which was only 65,000 words long. So there's that part of it too. But Goodreads can be a really good place to look, and I found some really great beta readers through some of the groups that they have there. You can also just put out a call on social media. Again, a lot of my beta readers from Tethered Spirits came from Twitter, where I just put out a call that I was looking for beta readers and put up some info about the story and how long it was and what I was looking for in terms of feedback. I also was able to search some of the hashtags on there, like CP Match and Beta Bash, and found some people on there who were looking for feedback on their stories, and so I just reached out to them and asked if they would be willing to swap manuscripts, and we did kind of a trial run with a few chapters to see how that went, and then just went from there. And that's the other really important thing that I would suggest, is that you should be willing to swap manuscripts with other people. I have always found it to be hard to get the number of beta readers that I'm looking for if I am just asking people to read and I'm not willing to do some work myself and to read other writers' manuscripts. I think as your audience grows, this becomes less of an issue. You maybe have more people who are willing to beta read for you, and you've kind of proven yourself to be a writer who, writes good stories and the stories that people want to read. But when you're first starting out and you don't really have that social proof yet, or you haven't published many books, you just don't have that audience yet to draw on. And honestly, I think there's really some value to be had in doing these kinds of swaps and in giving critique to other writers. I think it can really help your skills as a writer to grow, because you're learning to look at a manuscript critically, and think about what needs to be fixed and changed and maybe how that could happen in order to make the story better. And when you do that, then you're able to go back to your own story and you've practiced those same skills, and you can take those skills to your own manuscript and use them to make your story better. And revision is a really important part of the writing process, so anything you can do to build your skills in that area, I think is a good idea. In some of my earlier writing years, I just did a ton of critiques and manuscript swaps with people, and I honestly learned so much from doing that, more so than I think I had ever learned about writing previously. It really helped me to grow and develop my own skills, and it's something that I think every writer should do, especially if you're newer to writing and you're trying to find a way to quickly build your skills and to learn to be a better writer. Reach out and swap manuscripts with other people. There's always people looking for feedback, and any kind of feedback you can give is great. Now that you know where to find your beta readers, we got to figure out how to ask them to beta read for you. You want to think about your potential pool of beta readers and who you can be asking. If this is the second or third or fourth book in a series, you don't have as much wiggle room because probably you want to be finding beta readers who have already read the first book in a series or would be willing to read it. Sometimes you can provide people with a synopsis of things that have happened in the first or the second book before giving them, later books in the series, and that works okay. But it is ideal if you can find readers who have already read the first book and kind of know the story and the characters in that way. Once you've figured out kind of what you're looking for in a beta reader, you'll want to create maybe a sign-up form or something like that. This isn't something that I used to do. I used to just kind of have people email me or reach out to me if they were interested in beta reading, and that's perfectly fine. Now I try to be a little more organized about it, and that's kind of where that sign-up form comes in handy. It's just a Google form. I'll link it down in the description if you want to see an example of kind of what my form looks like and some of the questions you might ask. But in that form, I provide the book's genre and its intended audience. I might give a brief description of the book either there or in like the call on social media where I'm looking for beta readers. I also give the word count and the expected turnaround time for when I want all the feedback returned to me. I also include a list of content warnings to avoid any potential harm to beta readers, and then I encourage people to reach out if they have any questions about a specific content warning or anything like that. I also make sure to lay out my expectations for beta readers very clearly, which usually just means that I will be sending out the first couple chapters to them at first, and then we can kind of see how things go from there, and if that's something that we want to continue. That gives them an opportunity to back out if they decide that they don't want to beta read the story after all, or if they decide that it's just not for them. I also ask what format they want to receive the book in, and if they're interested in doing a swap, I ask them to give me some information about their book so I can kind of be selective with that as far as, I don't want to be swapping manuscripts with someone who I know that I'm just not going to enjoy their story. I don't think that's helpful for either of us. When I put out the call for beta readers, I like to create kind of just a little graphic image. I'll pop that up on the screen for you to see the one that I did for Tethered Spirits. But it just kind of gives like a tagline for the book or something interesting that I think will pull people in and make them want to sign up to beta read. I try to be enthusiastic but polite the way that I ask for beta readers, and just, remember that these people are doing you a favor and you just want to start that relationship off on the right foot and really just be as kind and as genuine as possible. Once you've had people fill out that form, then it's time to kind of pick your team of beta readers and figure out who's going to be a good fit for the story. You might not get that many responses, in which case you might consider just sending out the first couple of chapters to everybody who asks. I also think it's a good idea to be flexible when you're working with beta readers. It's okay to have a specific process in mind and to kind of guide beta readers through that process so that you get the feedback that you need to make the story the best it can be. But don't be so rigid about it that you kick people off your beta reading team or don't even consider them as beta readers because they want to do things a little differently or kind of deviate from your process a little bit. I think that's especially true if you're working with more experienced beta readers or people who have been beta reading for a long time and have worked on multiple manuscripts. They might already have their own strategies and methods in place, and you don't want to disrupt that too much if that's what works for them. Honestly, this is just kind of coming from my own personal experiences. I have been a beta reader for authors who were super demanding and required a lot of work on my part in terms of like the questionnaires that they wanted filled out, or the kind of feedback that they were looking for, or the chats that they wanted to have after I read certain chunks of chapters, things like that, that just get to be kind of micromanaging your beta readers and made me feel a little bit icky as a beta reader. It just gets to be a little frustrating because when you're doing a favor for somebody, and beta reading is a favor, like you are doing the author a favor when you sign up to be a beta reader. And so I just feel like you should treat your beta readers accordingly. Be respectful of them, be respectful of their time. It's okay to manage the process and to guide beta readers, but also don't be one of those authors who is driving your beta readers crazy with all of the demands and the requests that you're making. It doesn't hurt to give your beta readers a little room to breathe and a little room to go through the process in a way that works best for them. So that's all I have for you today on getting started working with beta readers. Hopefully some of those tips were helpful to you, and if you've worked with beta readers before, I'd love to know how that process works for you and how you find them and set that up. I am going to be posting 2 more videos looking at other parts of the beta reading process, including how I work with beta readers exactly throughout the process, and then how I incorporate their feedback afterwards. So be sure to subscribe and ring the bell if you want to be notified as soon as those videos go on. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye.